passion of teaching.
Oh, yeah.
And we're lucky in Milford because, and again, I just go back to a few years ago when we were hurting. Milford teachers gave up their raises to save other teachers, to keep the class size. Other towns deferred them. And I remember sitting around saying, there's the difference. Here's a group of Milfordians who happen to be teachers. Because our teachers really, they get it. They're part of this town. What they do for the kids is amazing. And it kills me when I see them having to work second jobs.
Well, and you know, I've been to several programs at the schools that teachers have gone out of their way really to make the programs interesting. There's one at the middle school. It's kind of an international program where students have to learn about a particular country, bring in samples of the food, and show where it is in the world and things of that nature. So it teaches culture and geography and maybe a little bit of international relations and things. And you know, they took over the whole gym at the Stacy Middle School, and I guess it's become now the second year, probably the third year, be coming up. And it was something that parents got involved in and got interested in.
But that's great to get.
Yeah, and we've seen it at the high school when a student is from another country visiting Milford for the year or whatever, and going to school there, and they raise that country's flag, and the student tells about their school, and that's a learning experience for the rest of the students too. So there are a lot of good programs going on in Milford and in the area schools.
Yeah, you should tell my daughter that, because I get home and all my office supplies are wiped out, and when I look around, she says, if the FinCom gave the school enough money, we wouldn't have to
Aren't
take
you
it.
on the finance committee?
Yeah, well, to her point is, if you gave us more money, we could afford.
Yeah,
And
well, I
that's
think, and I'm sure there is a little bit of that, and most teachers, you know, the good ones especially, will dig into their own pockets.
they're paying
sometimes.
thousands of dollars a year.
Yeah.
You know, when you really, because I'm seeing it now.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a point, Lexi puts it on my credit card. You know, all of a sudden AC Moore has become, I say, do I own stock in this place?
Well,
But, you know, really.
and in some communities, that it doesn't occur, or perhaps the teachers don't have the resources to even dig in themselves very much.
Well, some of the teachers, you know, when they were early on, you remember, you know, you're here, you're barely making it on your own.
College loans. I mean, that's I think one of the big problems nationally and certainly in our state coming up that we're going to have to be addressing in the coming session. We've done some things so far, but the cost of education.
Dick, I don't know how it won't explode.
Yeah, and it's not just the private education either.
No,
It's
everything follows it.
UMass and the state universities, you know, Worcester and Framingham and the others, and the community colleges are at a point where they're, in many cases, they're no longer helping the people that can't afford college, because they're
$20-some thousand.
Yeah. And that, you know, compared to say BC, which is 50,000.
Keep going.
More than that.
Keep going. 50. Holy Cross this year.
Yeah.
And I remember we just got a new president, and I said, we really have to talk about your liberal arts education, because you should know how to write a letter. And the term only and 55,000 should not be in the same sentence.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the big schools now, private, are 55 plus.
Yeah. And one of the areas that the business community talks about is that they need to have a better relationship with the colleges, even the community college. Fortunately, in the area, we have a very good vocational school at Blackstone Valley over in Upton that does, I think, meet the needs of area businesses. But the colleges need to do that too, because you know, one is the student needs to get a job when they get out. And you've got to have some basics. Sometimes it's really basic skills. It's one of the areas that the schools, whether they're public or private or charter, at the below college level, need to continue to work on just basic, show up when you're supposed to. And
I don't know how a kid graduating. I mean, when I was in school, Holy Cross, it was $6,200 all in, and I was amazed that my parents could pay for my school. But I look at my daughter now. It's $55,000 this year, $55,500. If she had no help, she'd be walking out of school owing close to $250,000. Even if she got a decent job, she'd end up paying $1,500 a month.
Oh, you're probably 30 years to try to repay that, maybe longer.
But you come out of school, I mean, what did you have when you graduated? $32.80? You know,
Yeah.
you could fit
Well,
in.
and that's an area where the federal government certainly is pulling back on scholarship money, financial aid. States have not been able to do as
But how
much.
can these kids, if they got say they get a job 55, 60 grand, nobody would say that's a bad job. You know, that'd be a nice job.
But they have a heavy
If you're
financial
paying even $1,000 a month for school loans, let's see, when you graduated, you needed a car.
Yeah.
You still need a place to live, and I'm amazed that I look at these apartments around here. That's $1,500 a month. So I
And in the
said,
Boston area, it's even higher. Boston's become one of the high rent areas for, and not necessarily for the greatest apartments either.
but even there, they're saying the inventory's so low they're paying $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
Well, if I got $300-400 on a car, I've got $1,500, another $1,000. That's like $40,000 after tax. I can't eat. I can't put in gas in the car. You sit there and say, it's got to stop somehow. There's going to be another housing crisis in my mind. I hate to be a doom and gloom person, but if we don't do something for these kids.
Well, now it's, the economists are saying it's a point where it's better to buy the house than to rent, but you can't get the financing to buy it. So either way, it becomes a problem. And I think we do need part just to be competitive as a nation and as a state. We need to get people educated. One of the big reasons businesses locate in the eastern Massachusetts in particular and central part of the state is the colleges that we have and the
talent pool.
Yeah, and both in the sense of the faculty and the students who do research in the colleges and the graduates who are able to work for some of these companies. We just state did a financing grant for a company in Oxford that does robotics, and they are one of the larger companies in the world that does this. And they're going to be adding more people. We had to get them connected to a sewer system so they could expand. And they're going to be growing, and their jobs range from somebody right out of vocational school to a PhD in engineering, and the average salary is $70,000. So companies like that, and some of the life sciences, pay decent money for research.
Well, when you
people.
look at Avicii, here's a company that is not, as much as we are proud that it's the biggest oligo contract manufacturer in the world, but they're part of a Japanese company.
Yeah.
So the perspective is not just, hey, these are kids who grew up in Milford who want to stay here. If we don't give them the talent and the ability to draw the talent, because I remember we had a company out in San Diego, biggest problem I had is I could not recruit PhDs into the area.
Well, and two of the issues that we have been making some progress in the legislature on is the two of the issues that affect businesses are the healthcare costs and utility costs, electricity costs. We passed legislation this year in both areas to try to control the cost, the rising costs, and actually give, in the electricity side, to promote more competition to try to bring the cost down and more alternative energy options for people. And in healthcare, to really focus on getting everybody in healthcare working toward a goal of not being double inflation, which is what healthcare costs have been, so that we can try to bring those. We're the 11th most expensive in electricity, and we're number one in costs. We've actually slipped in the ranking on insurance because we've gone from number one in high cost insurance to number 9, partly because of some of the reforms and partly because other states have not been able to keep up. So if we were starting to address those, the other issue that employers of some of the large companies have said their issue is they need to be able to know that the talent pool is available for their workers, that they can either they're trained or that they can train, and also that their suppliers are nearby. In fact, some of the companies that over the last 20 or 30 years ship jobs to China or to other countries overseas now are starting to bring them back because just the shipping costs, they send raw materials sometimes over there and get it manufactured cheaply, but then the shipping cost to get it back are largely oil costs.
We've seen a trend for contract research that initially, an FTE, a full-time equivalent PhD, in China, they were buying them at 75 grand a year versus 180 here. And it certainly had an advantage if you were a Pfizer, where you're negotiating for 300-400 FTEs. They developed this whole, we used to call it the 50,000 foot culture, people who lived in airplanes.
Yeah.
And they had this incredible infrastructure. Well, all the small biotechs figured, well, we got to follow them. And then they started finding out that, okay, if there's an issue, it's 3 days to have a 1 hour meeting.
Yeah, it's not that quick to solve. And
it's 18 hours there.
And they've had quality issues with particularly some of the medications.
So we're seeing a lot more come back of the CRO, CMO jobs, contract manufacturing, back to Massachusetts. In fact, the Biomeasure is expanding.
No, that's a good example. And then, we've got it used to be Saint-Gobain, now it's Veralia. It's called years ago it was Foster Forbes, the glass recycling plants that have reinvested a lot of money in Milford in their plant. We've got hopefully people will keep drinking Budweiser because their main client is the Merrimack Budweiser plant that are doing the bottles. So but we're seeing rebirth of manufacturing. Now it's more upscale because manufacturing today, a lot of the machinery is computerized and it's not the same kind of stuff that was in the mills.
You're not going to see a big steel mill being built here.
No. But we're seeing, there's some, I think, very exciting stuff happening in the Milford area and Hopedale with the rebirth of the Grafton-Upton Railroad. That project is underway, restoring the crossings. The state's contributed $1 million to that, but the railroad's putting a lot of its own money into it.
But now people will ask you, what will the railroad get the local economy?
Well, it's already bringing in businesses that need rail to ship their raw materials in and their product out. That's happening in Upton with the wood pellet business for one. That's now hiring people. There's some activity now at the Draper plant in the West Foundry. There's a business coming in there.
Finally,
it looks very good.
That's wonderful.
And it's going to produce some jobs and manufacturing, good heavy jobs.
Well, this.
And what I was going to say that we've had for 35 years the Draper plant has been vacant and not paying much in the way of taxes because it doesn't have to, and not providing any jobs, maybe a couple of security people, but that's about it. The railroad will make that building far more valuable for businesses that need rail to get their products either to market or get their raw materials in, or both. And if Congress does anything this year, and of course that's questionable, but if they do anything, the bill that has bipartisan support to designate the American Heritage Industrial National Park, which would include a focus in Hopedale at the Draper facility. The business that would bring in a sense of tourism and just activities around the plant, plus the railroad bringing in some longer-term jobs. There's some opportunities there to really, I think, improve the economy of the region. And the other thing that the owners of the railroad are doing is that as they're restoring the rail, they're putting in a higher quality grade of rail that has the capacity to handle double-stack cars.
So you could put people.
Well, not just people, but this initially industry. It's the containers stacked up.
Oh, okay.
And what they've already talked to CSX, which is the major freight company, about taking trains off the main line in Grafton and getting them back on in Franklin, which would then free up the main line between Worcester and Boston for more passenger rail. Ultimately, there's also the possibility to do some passenger rail here, but certainly the freight is very real, and very this year and next year that's going to be starting to be available, and that will bring businesses back, and properties along the rail will become particularly valuable in the sense of industrial and maybe some degree commercial
Well, we
property.
certainly see a lot of people criticizing selectmen when they give TIFs. And I've always sat there and said, if you're building a building, then the TIF seems like a real good idea.
Yeah.
Because even when we gave a local company a TIF, halfway through they left, and everybody was up in arms.
No, but just